This video is sponsored by War Thunder. It might be surprising to see a group of airmen wrestle with an airplane after it's just landed, while another crew member grabs a wheel and sticks it under the wing. But for an ultra-lightweight glider that rolls on bicycle-style wheels strapped to a jet engine, this is just another day at work. Its primary weapon is a camera system so advanced that it can take pictures like this while flying at the edge of space. It sounds quite advanced until you realize that its flight surfaces are still operated by cables and pulleys, because this masterpiece was designed in the 1950s, back when anyone who had Bluetooth had to seek immediate dental care. It's without a doubt the most difficult airplane to land. In fact, the pilot cannot land this beast alone, which is why a sports car has to chase it down the runway while speaking to the pilot over radio. And after a 10-hour-long mission inside a cockpit so small you couldn't fully stretch your legs in, it's obvious why the pilot would be simply exhausted. And yet, the United States Air Force refuses to retire this aircraft for one simple reason. Nothing else can do what the U-2 Dragon Lady does, even 70 years after its first flight. But why the only way to land this aircraft is a controlled crash? Why U-2 pilots wear metal spurs on their boots and lower their landing gear while still at 70,000 feet? How this three-finger signal holds the key to every U-2 mission? And why replacing this aircraft's wet film cameras with digital technology was considered a downgrade is not what you think. Landing the U-2 is one of the most difficult parts of operating this aircraft. The U-2 has a tiny canopy, great for reducing drag, but it severely limits visibility during landing. Wearing a space helmet doesn't help either, further limiting the pilot's peripheral vision. And if that wasn't challenging enough already, the aircraft has to land on two sets of wheels, like a bicycle. That's because Kelly Johnson, the legendary aerospace engineer who also designed the SR-71 Blackbird, envisioned the U-2 to be ultra-lightweight. For him, the math was simple. 2 wheels are lighter than 3. This compromise is what enabled the U-2's ultra-high altitude flights, at the cost of always requiring a wingman to spot the landings. But the U-2 was a single-seat aircraft, so in the early days of the program, the wingman, who was just another qualified U-2 pilot, would fly a T-33 jet trainer behind the U-2 during landings. Of course, it soon became obvious that a car would be much better suited for this role. And that's how the U-2's iconic chase car scenes were born in the late 1950s. Since retiring the Chevy Camaros, these days the chase car is typically a Dodge Charger, but essentially it has to be a high-performance car that can make sharp turns onto the runway and then match the speed of the airplane within a few seconds. This is why, in addition to learning how to fly the airplane, which starts in the TU-2S, the 2-seat trainer version of the Dragon Lady, all U-2 pilots are also trained to operate the chase car. In this capacity, they're referred to as mobile officers. Mobiles are the eyes and ears of the pilot on the ground. Once the chase car catches up with the U-2 as it descends for landing, the mobile starts counting down the distance between the rear landing gear and the ground over the radio. You'll see why that's important in a minute, but how the mobile estimates that distance is actually kinda cool. The main landing gear, which is in the front, is 2 feet in diameter. From the point of view of the mobile, when the bottom of the main landing gear meets the horizon, the aircraft is 4 feet off the ground. When the top of the main landing gear meets the horizon, the aircraft is just 2 feet off the ground. And that's the pilot's cue to drop the aircraft to the ground. I mean that quite literally. The only way to safely land the U-2 is dropping it down like a rock while less than 2 feet off the ground. See, the U-2's wings are extremely efficient at generating lift, which give the aircraft minimal takeoff distance and allow it to fly at the edge of space. But during landing, the cushion of air created by ground effect is so pronounced that the U-2's high-lift wings simply don't want to land, unless they're fully stalled. This is why knowing when the U-2 is exactly 2 feet off the ground is critical. Stall the aircraft any higher, and the hard landing could risk damaging both the airframe and the sensitive equipment inside. I should note that the underside of U-2's wingtips are made of titanium to endure the grind of repeated landings. But the mobile officer's role goes far beyond just getting the jet safely on the ground. In fact, the U-2 wouldn't be able to take off in the first place without its wingman. While the pilot is getting integrated into the spacesuit, the mobile does all the necessary pre-flight checks, including checking all the flight controls. He even gets into the cockpit to do the other preparations before the pilot gets in. That's because doing all those things in a tiny cockpit while wearing a bulky spacesuit is quite cumbersome. In fact, one of the first qualification steps as a U-2 pilot is leaving them in the suit for an extended time to make sure they're not claustrophobic. Or you could just play War Thunder for free. War Thunder is the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made, with over 2,500 vehicles from 10 major nations, anything from early airplanes of the 1920s to the fighter jets of today. Not everybody gets to fly in a U-2 spy plane, but when you play War Thunder, the realistic graphics and sound effects put you right at the helm of the most powerful war machines of our times. The vehicle damage models in War Thunder are extraordinary, modeled realistically down to their individual components. So when something gets damaged, you can see it using the X-ray vision and decide how to make your next move. This is why me and over 70 million other people play War Thunder on their PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and even mobile. Whether you're new or a returning player who hasn't played in 6 months, click the links below and you'll receive a massive bonus pack on PC and consoles, including multiple premium vehicles, the exclusive vehicle decorator Eagle of Valor, 100,000 Silver Lions, and a 7-day premium account. It's a limited time offer, so don't miss it. Once the pilot gets into the aircraft and leaves the hangar, the mobile is right behind, accompanying the aircraft to the runway. That's because the pilot would not take off unless the mobile gives him the 3-finger signal. Can you guess what that means? Before takeoff, 3 pins need to be pulled out of the aircraft. One is the pin that activates the emergency start system. That pin is otherwise in, so that the engine doesn't accidentally start on the ground. The other 2 pins are for the pogo wheels. These auxiliary wheels are secured with a pin and help balance this winged bicycle while it's on the ground. That red tag is attached to the pin. But these 2 pins must be removed seconds before takeoff, so once the U-2 lifts off the ground, the pogo wheels fall down with gravity. The pogos may sometimes fall together, and sometimes one after the other. The mobile's 3-finger signal confirms to the pilot that those 3 pins have been removed. But if you look closely, you also see the pilot giving back a 3-finger signal. That's because the pilot also has to confirm back to the mobile that he has removed the primary ejection pin, the secondary ejection pin, and the canopy pin, which ensure the ejection system is armed. Only then the U-2 is ready for takeoff, and as the aircraft swiftly lifts off, the mobile follows closely, ensuring that both pogos have detached, and alerting the pilot if otherwise. By the way, it's not unusual for U-2 pilots to listen to music while in transit. At 70,000 feet, the U-2 pilots are the highest human beings on Earth, while sitting on a bomb the whole time. I'm referring to the explosive charges under the seat, which are triggered in the unlikely event that the pilot has to eject. At such high altitudes, air temperature drops to minus 76 degrees Fahrenheit. And if the pilot was not wearing a special suit, ejecting would result in death, but not from the cold. Before freezing to death, the pilot would actually boil to death. The sudden pressure drop during an ultra-high altitude ejection would bubble the blood and other fluids in the human body, just like when you open a can of Coke. The only thing preventing such agony is this astronaut-grade $250,000 full-pressure suit. And this pilot is about to put it on. I promise, I'll explain everything. The full-pressure suit is made of 4 layers. The outermost layer is a fire retardant. The second layer is what gives the suit its shape. The third layer is the gas container layer, which allows the suit to be pressurized. And finally, the innermost layer is a soft liner to help absorb moisture and provide general comfort. Each pilot has 2 custom-made suits, one primary and one spare. The helmet is also custom-made, and in fact is the heaviest part of the gear, commonly causing neck and back problems for U-2 pilots. This little slot on the helmet is what prevents pilots from starvation and dehydration during their long missions. In fact, they can even warm up their food.
There's a food heater in the aircraft. You can heat up your food.
I hear tube food tastes pretty good. These metal spurs are part of the ejection system. The spurs are first secured to the pilot's boots using straps. If the straps are too tight, the pilot would ask the crew to adjust them so he's comfortable throughout his 10-hour-long flight. Later on, when the pilot gets into the cockpit, spring-loaded cables are hooked up to the back of the spurs. These cables are automatically reeled in during the ejection sequence to prevent leg injuries as the pilot shoots out of the cockpit. As you can imagine, it can get pretty hot and sweaty inside an airtight suit. That's why the suit is hooked up to a cooler filled with liquid oxygen. The cooler not only regulates the pilot's body temperature, but it also provides 100% oxygen for breathing. It takes a team of 2 or 3 people 45 minutes to an hour to integrate the pilot into the suit, including a safety check to ensure the suit can be pressurized without leaking air. Add to that 1 hour of pre-breathing oxygen and some cardio to help with purging nitrogen from the bloodstream, plus the pre-flight briefing that the pilot has to go through, and I'm already exhausted.
It was a bagel about 6:30. Went to bed at 2200, got up at 6, and ear, nose, and throat feeling good.
The cooler accompanies the pilot from the time he leaves the building, during the transfer ride to the hangar, and while making his way to the airplane and tapping its nose for good luck. The cooler is only disconnected once the pressure suit has been integrated into the cockpit. This includes hooking up the pilot to the U-2's onboard cooling system for temperature regulation, and also to the aircraft's oxygen tank for breathing. An estimated 2.5 to 5 gallons of liquid oxygen are pumped into the U-2's oxygen tank, which should be enough to sustain the pilot during those 10-hour-long missions. Oh, and about that. That's just part of the urine collection device, or UCD. It plugs into the pilot's suit and helps collect the urine into a container inside the cockpit. I know what you're thinking. Whose job is it to empty that container?
That's what the pilot uses to pee in while they're up there for that long of a flight. So,
you guys take that out?
we take that out. Yeah.
But this is really important.
Failure of the UCD, it makes for a really long day, an uncomfortable day.
That look comes from experience. By the way, the pilot's pressure suit is normally not pressurized and is the last line of defense in case of cabin depressurization. At its heart, the U-2 was a high-altitude, high-resolution camera the same one that photographed something which almost started and thankfully prevented a nuclear war.
The United States arrived at the decision for an arms blockade after studying reconnaissance photographs made with high-powered cameras from planes flying several miles from the Cuban coast.
That was the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962.
How far advanced is this? Sir, we've never seen this kind of an installation before.
The images captured by the U-2 provided undeniable evidence.
The purpose of these bases can be none other than to provide a nuclear strike capability.
In its early days, the U-2 program was so classified that if a U-2 was shot down, Washington had a pre-planned cover story, denying any connection to it. This is why the aircraft had been equipped with a button that would destroy the camera if needed. If Gary Powers had been able to destroy the camera when his airplane was shot down by the Soviets, history may have taken a different turn than it did. But even the best photographs have their limits. A black and white photograph is good, but it doesn't tell you if there's a tank hidden under the tree. A radar, however, can penetrate the foliage to see what's underneath. This is why over the years, radars and infrared cameras have been incorporated into the U-2, and with the help of a special antenna, these radar images can bounce up to space, where orbiting satellites transmit them back to processing centers on the ground. In fact, the U-2's nose could be replaced with another nose that carried different sensors, just like the way you change the lens on a camera. That said, in 2022, the U-2's old-school optical bar camera, or OBC, which had captured over 10 million feet of film during countless sorties, was retired and replaced with modern digital cameras, which wasn't exactly an upgrade.
I would just say that the loss of the OBC out of Beale Air Force Base is a tragedy. For almost 50 years has supported missions out of Beale and the FOLs, and it will be dearly missed.
The optical bar cameras use wet film, which meant the U-2 had to land. The roll of film had to be transported to a film development facility and then developed before it could be viewed. To reduce the turnaround time, the Air Force created mobile processing centers that could be forward deployed to process the film anywhere in the world where the U-2 planes operate. In comparison, modern digital cameras offer real-time access to the footage, but there is a compromise.
So the biggest significance is the loss of resolution. While it's digital and it's near real time, you're accepting a product that has less resolution or lower resolution.
The wet film is dead. But it's the U-2 pilots who find themselves cornered in a coffin. Let me explain. As the U-2 flies higher and higher, the atmosphere gets thinner. This means the airplane has to go faster just to stay airborne. But increasing altitudes and colder temperatures lower the speed of sound. Can you see the problem? The U-2 has to fly in a very small speed range, where going too slow makes it stall, and going too fast can break it apart. Since the U-2 wasn't built to fly supersonic, the pilot is now stuck between these narrow limits, which make it tricky to control the aircraft. Pilots call this dangerous zone the coffin corner, because there is almost no room for error. In fact, in the early days of the program, Lockheed test pilots reported that during a bank, the U-2's inner wing could be stalled, while its outer wing would be vibrating from excessive speed. To get out of the coffin corner, the pilot simply has to descend. This is initiated by lowering the landing gear to increase drag while still at high altitudes. To appreciate what the U-2 provides, consider that during the 6 weeks of Operation Desert Storm, the U-2 flew 260 sorties for a total of 2,022 hours. The U-2s tracked Iraqi troops, armory buildups, and assessed bomb damage. These sorties provided approximately 90% of the US Army's targeting intelligence 50% of all imagery intelligence and 30% of the total intelligence for that war. But none of that would have been possible without the Dragon Keepers, who pull the aircraft apart and put it back together, keeping the Dragon Lady in top shape for its missions. When your job involves flying at the edge of space by yourself, inside an airplane that lands like a brick, you tend to be really nice to your Dragon Keepers, considering that they're the ones who make sure the urine tank has been emptied before takeoff.
After every flight, we'll have to pull the tank out and empty it and clean it and put it back in.
Oh,
So,
that's probably not the highlight.
no, that's the least favorite job that we have to do in this jet.
So if you want to work on the U-2, there is a job for you too. Play War Thunder for free on PC, consoles, and mobile. New and returning players on PC and consoles that haven't played in 6 months will also receive a massive bonus pack, including multiple premium vehicles. It's a limited time offer, so click the links now.